about it on a personal level. If you talk about it on a global or a community level, we could be talking about how to be nonviolent in demonstrating. We can talk about how to be nonviolent in community meetings. But in order to do that, we have to become nonviolent with our attitudes, with our consciousness, and with our ability to use certain processes in order to demonstrate that we are not violent, passively violent in nature. The book that Vicki and I have studied, and he's written several others, is by Marshall Rosenberg, and it's on nonviolent communication. It is taught by all over the country. And Vicki and I had the opportunity to be in class at Unity Village in seminary. And what happened is, for about 2 years, we were broken down into groups of 4 people, and each of us sat together for an hour every day and learned to communicate non-violently. Now, in the foreword of one of the books, Arun Gandhi, who is Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, writes about his experience with his grandfather. And by the way, he is going to be here in April of this coming year, in 2016, here at Unity of Richmond to speak, okay? And be with us for a weekend. But anyway, not Mahatma Gandhi, Arun Gandhi, okay? Just so you understand. Anyway, and what he talked about was that when he was a teenager, he lived in South Africa. And in South Africa, one of the challenges he was not black enough to be black, and he wasn't light enough to be white. And so he caught it from both sides. And it created a lot of turmoil in him, a lot of anxiety in him. He acted some of that out. So his parents sent him to see his grandfather in India. And he lived with him for 18 months. And his grandfather shared with him a few ideas. One is that we think of violence usually when it's physical. It's not violence unless it's physical, unless it's a war, unless somebody is physically hurting somebody, unless it is beating somebody up. That's violence. And so most of us don't think we are violent by nature because we don't do that. Most people don't do that, thank God. But we do have thoughts that are called passive violence. We have actions that are passive in nature. And what his grandfather taught him was that there is physical violence in the world, but the thing that is more damaging is this thing called passive violence. Passive violence is when you say or do something that hurts another person in such a way that it diminishes who they are and what they are. And we all have done that from time to time, and most of us will probably do it again, and hopefully we'll catch ourselves and move in a different direction as we do it. We have a tendency to do it with spouses. We have a tendency to do it with our children. We have a tendency to do it with a co-worker when we don't agree with them. And we make statements that aren't in the best interest of all concerned. You know, when my son was pretty young, we had the issue that a lot of teenagers have with their parents of cleaning his room. And I would use a statement like, "You really are sloppy." Well, you see, that's a judgment. And I couldn't understand why he couldn't understand that, why he'd reacted that. But when I finally learned to say, "Your room isn't being kept neat, and that concerns me," we could have a discussion over it. And the discussion actually ended up where I said, "I don't really care what you do with your room. It's your room. You're right. But please understand that when it gets to a certain condition and you want certain things done, we're not going to do it for you because you've created a mess." And he understood that. And we never had an argument about that after that. It was really interesting to me because I was able to not judge what he was doing, but instead to look at what was happening. Gandhi said that his grandfather said, "On one wall in your bedroom, I want you to put a chart up, and I want you to list every physical violence that you either see or hear about, over the next year. And on the other wall, I want you to list all the passive violence. The things that have been said to you, the things that you are saying to people, the things that you're experiencing in the world that's taking place even in this village, in our home. And I want you to write the passive violence down. And Arun Gandhi said at the end of the year he had a wall filled with passive violence and not a lot of physical violence, even though it was going on. And what his grandfather taught him was that the passive violence leads to physical violence. That when one is hurt, when one is talked to in a certain way and cannot respond to that, then they are wounded. And wounded animals and wounded people will act out that woundedness. And we all know that. If nobody in the world were violent in nature, didn't talk or act in violent ways, passive violence, then we wouldn't have any violence. It's just that simple. But we do. But you and I maybe can't do something about somebody else's situation, but we can do something about ours. And we can learn how to do that. Passive violence, again, ultimately generates anger in the victim who acts violently. It is a passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. And how can we extinguish the fire if we don't first cut off the fuel that ignites the fire? Passive violence ignites physical violence in the long run. A person who is not passively violent cannot be a non-violent person in a demonstration. If you look at the teachings, people are taught and trained to be nonviolent in demonstrations. It just doesn't come naturally. So they go through role play and they learn how to do that. Today, I just want to talk about, again, that idea of what can we do so that if we ever get in that situation, we have the opportunity not to be violent, but to be nonviolent, truly nonviolent, in the way that we treat others, in the way that we treat people in our home, the way we treat people in our community. Nonviolence means letting your positive self emerge. Letting your positive self emerge. It means to be dominated by love and appreciation, compassion and care. Rather than allowing that part of ourselves that can sometimes be self-centered and selfish, aggressive, and even greedy take over. You see, when we live in a world of fight or flight, we are living in a world of fright and fear. And anytime we are fearful, we are going to react rather than act. So today, I want to share with you some ideas on how we can act rather than react. There is a process, a 4-step process in working with people that can create the opportunity for coming together rather than being apart. And that process is, one, that we are observant. We observe things in a situation. In a given situation, I observe the action of another person. The second thing I have to do is be able to share my feelings with that person about that circumstance. And then I have to share a need for change. And then the 4th step is to request that. Ask and ye receive, as Jesus said. And I also have to do that honoring the other person, not thinking the other person's wrong, but just looking for a common denominator where we can come together and live peacefully and coexist in oneness. That's what it's really all about. So how do we go about doing that? How do we, again, begin to observe what's happening around us? Yogi Berra said, I love his statements, you can observe a lot just by watching. Not by feeling, by watching. So what we do is we learn to observe what a person is doing. When they are eating, they are eating. When they are sleeping, they are sleeping. When they are snoring, they are snoring. When they are playing the TV too loud, they're playing the TV too loud. When they don't put out the trash, they're not taking out the trash. But what do we say under those circumstances? That ridiculous noise that you are letting take out of that TV over there, or that radio over there, or what? Well, we don't use radios anymore, but anyway, that TV is so loud that I can't think in the other room. Now, does that make you want to turn it down? Or do you want to turn it up a little bit? Yeah, sure. Because you see, what's happened, I didn't make an observation, I made an evaluation of you and your behavior. And what we have to do is take the evaluation out and live with, if you would, the observation. You are playing, the TV is very loud at this time. You don't even say you are. Take that out. The TV is very loud at this time. Huh? Yeah, that tells you. Okay? Yeah, it's too loud. Then the next step is to share our feelings. But before we get there, let me just give you a couple examples. In a seminar, a woman was asked about her daughter. She came to be able to figure out how she and her daughter could get along. And the facilitator said, well, tell me about your daughter. And she said, she is lazy as you have ever, she's the laziest person on the earth. He said, well, wait a minute. Is that an evaluation or is that an observation? Well, what do you mean? Well, tell me what she does. And they went, she doesn't take out the trash, she doesn't help with dinner, she doesn't wash the dishes properly, all those kind of things. And she always wants to do something else, and so she's lazy. Back to being lazy. The evaluation continues. So if we evaluate somebody, if you say to a child, and I don't recommend this, you are lazy, you are evaluating what they're doing, not observing what they are doing. So try to observe what another person is doing. Another idea that Marshall used in his book, and I thought it was great about himself. He said he was raised in Detroit, and that as a young man, and through high school and while he was in college, he would really get irritated with drivers. And so when they do something what he thought was dumb, what he would do is roll the window down and say, "You idiot!" And he said it didn't change anything, but he felt better. Yeah, we all feel that way. But he said, I grew up. I got better. I got a doctorate. And when I got my doctorate, what I would do is roll the window down and say, "You sociopath!" Still evaluating just a little bit, okay? So what we need to learn to do, again, is come back to this idea of making a statement that talks about what a person is doing. And they're not doing it right or wrong, they're just doing it. And when we can talk to a person, not confront, but talk to a person about that, in a normal voice, we're not angry. If you're angry, forget it. Wait, okay? Then what we can do is start to have that discussion. So when I say to somebody, you are raising your voice at me, then the next thing I need to do is share a feeling. Now, they say for men it's really hard to share a feeling. And the way I check myself is when I say I think, it's not a feeling. Vicki will say, that's not a feeling, that's a thought. Then I'll say, oh, really? And because I don't have a great vocabulary, and most of us don't, for feeling. Words of feeling are words when you're comfortable and fulfilled, are words like amazed, comfortable, confident, eager, energetic, glad, joyous, relieved. Those are the things when I feel my needs are being served, I feel that way. We all do. However, when I have a need that's not being fulfilled, then I can become angry and annoyed, confused. I'm giving you words now, okay? Disappointed, discouraged, distressed, embarrassed, frustrated, helpless, hopeless, sad, nervous, lonely, irritated, impatient, overwhelmed, and uncomfortable. Just a few. Those are feelings, aren't they? Think about them. And so I need to learn how to share that. So if somebody is raising their voice at me, I'm saying, when you are raising your voice at me, and that scares me. Now, what will most people do? except for Richard. I'm not yelling. I'm not yelling. No, what we tend to do is we can understand that dialogue, and it brings us down so we can have a discussion. And then you can share your need. What do I need from this situation? What change do I need? With the TV too loud, I need the TV turned down. Could you do that for me? And most people will say yes to that, obviously. I mean, we had a guest stay in our home. This was a number of years ago, and we were still doing some work, so some of the walls weren't quite all finished, and the doors weren't all up. But anyway, they stayed with us, and we would turn the TV on upstairs, where Vicki and I kind of hibernate when we go home. And what happened was this person said that night, very calm, said, you know, the TV's really loud, and I can't sleep with much noise. Would you mind turning it down? Now, that was a request, and we said certainly. And we did. Well, that's a simple one. But she didn't get angry with us and say, you know, the next morning, you know, the TV kept me up all night long. It was so loud and it was blasting all over the place. Can't you guys hear well? No. I think we would have had a different response. I don't know, but maybe, okay? But anyway, so what we have to learn to do is share our need. Then once we share the need, we then have to ask for the change. Okay, so one is observe what's going on. Number two, when you observe what's going on, look at your feelings and share the feeling or feelings. And the more difficult, the better this works, by the way. The more disarming it is, which is what we all want to do. And so then once I share my feelings, I have to ask for a need. I need to follow up with that. And you know, as you learn to do this, what happens, you're able to use it in a different way. When somebody comes in who has had no training in nonviolent communication, and we've had that happen with relatives, we've had that happen with children, we've had that happen here at the church from time to time, what we need to do is figure out how do we use that with a person and help a person share what they're thinking. And so what we learn to do is ask. Are you angry? Are you upset? What do you need done? What have I done, if anything, to cause that? Or what's going on? See, that's a positive way of talking to somebody. Rather than, well, you know, that's your problem. That doesn't work. So because we care, we're able then to use that process with a person who doesn't know how to do it because we've been trained in it and we learn about it. And you can buy books, read them, you can practice it, you can rehearse it, and it will work for you using this process of nonviolence. And the reason I'm talking about this morning is because I think it's important. You know, unity teaches that we are all connected together. We are all created in the likeness of God, not the likeness of fear. We are all created, and we all have a desire to do good because we are good, and that God is love, therefore we are love. Love is who we are, not how we feel, by the way. Feelings come and go. Love is a constant because God is constant, and you are love. And what we want to do as we grow spiritually is be in our spiritual mind and express that love and manifest that love in everything we're doing. But you know, we have to learn to agree and disagree with love. We teach that here. We believe that. We ask for that. That's a need that we have. And as we do that, we don't get into these big deals where everybody is wrong or a certain group is wrong and a certain group is right. We work it out. We talk about it. Because we're willing to, because we love one another and we're expressing that love and we are honoring each other as we do that. Chief Seattle said, "Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself and others. All things are bound together. All things are connected." Isn't that what we teach? That's part of primal thought. We are all connected together. We are all one. We call it as spirit. We are all one. Even scientifically, we are all one. We're learning that today. And it's in that oneness, it's in that togetherness that we want to exist and to make a difference and be great teachers one for the other. There was a woman by the name of Eddie Hillesum. She was a prisoner of war in the concentration camps during World War II. And she left a diary. And about 3 or 4 months before the war was over, she was sent to the gas chamber. Her diary is a diary about how to think nonviolently. I want to give you an excerpt from what she said. "I am not easily frightened," she wrote, "not because I am brave, but because I know I know that I am dealing with human beings, and that I must try as hard as I can to understand everything that anyone ever does." And that was the real import of this morning. Not that a disgruntled young Gestapo officer yelled at me, but that I felt no indignation, rather a real compassion, and would have liked to ask, "Did you have a very unhappy childhood? Did your girlfriend give you a hard time? What's going on in your life?" "Yes," she said, "he looked harassed and driven, sullen and weak. I should have liked to start trading him there and then, for I know that pitiful young men like that are dangerous as soon as they are let loose on mankind." She did that and wrote that a few days before they sent her to her death. And her whole diary is filled with how she was understanding another human being, not her enemy, under the most difficult of times. That's what we are called to do, to understand one another in the most difficult of times, to step forward and to say, as a child of God, as love in action, I want to communicate with you in such a way that we can grow together and learn together and be together in peace and harmony. You see, nonviolent communication really says that what I want to do is to get to what really matters with people, to understand that I should not and would not and don't need to use guilt or humiliation or shame or blame or coercion or threats. It is really useful for resolving conflicts, day-to-day conflicts. This week as you go to work, this week as you go home, this week as you communicate with others, think about what you are saying and don't react to what they are saying. If they are judging you, let them judge you. None of your business anyway. And if you will do that, then what you can do is step back and instead of reacting to that judgment, act by saying, "Tell me, what is it that is concerning you?" You're asking them to observe what's going on. And then, how do you feel about that? Now, don't do it like a therapy session, okay? They won't like that. But do it just generally as you talk to them. And I believe what will happen, I know what will happen because I've seen it, is some people will be shocked and know that you're really listening to them and you're caring. And they feel whole and they feel complete in that moment. They feel heard and they feel loved. Nonviolence is a loving way to create an atmosphere of love. It honors the good in each person, and it is, in essence, a catalyst for positive change. It is a way of being, a way of living. It is a way of saying, yes, I'm willing to find a solution that works for both of us. And so, being observant expressing our feelings, asking for a need and being willing to settle for a blending of needs as a solution, compromise, will bring clarity, peace, and joy in your life and the lives of those all around us. We must and can and do, and many of you do this already, learn to manage our feelings, our anxiety. We must have a way in which, and I really believe this with all my heart, that we can communicate with each other through love. We can agree and disagree in love, and when somebody disagrees with me, I'm not upset by it. I'm not angry with them about it. And they do that, and I do that, and you do that when we observe what's going on rather than evaluate what's going on. When we share our feelings then rather than sharing just what we think. When we're willing to share what we need, and sometimes we have to look within ourselves to find that, but the answer is there. And then when we ask, not with an expectation that the person is going to agree with me and do it just my way, but we ask so that we can find the right answer. It's in those circumstances that we are the nonviolent individuals that we are created to be. Most of us were taught, as we grew up, that we are bad, that we are not good, that we do bad things and other people do bad things. And then we were taught to tell them that and make them feel guilty over it, thinking that the guilt would make them have a change in mind, a change in heart, be penitent. And we know that doesn't work. So what we believe in unity, what we share with people is that you are good. You are a child of God. And as a child of God, you are blessed with so many wonderful abilities. And the greatest ability is to love yourself and others. Thank you. Are there any